The Sega Saturn. To some, this name doesn't mean much. Simply another failed attempt by Sega to gain top honours in the gaming market arena. A worthless box with no appeal. But to others it is the symbol and pure essence of what we would call niche. A system which has a indescribably unique vibe, with gaming experiences that only Sega and its development houses could supply. In the heart of the hardcore, the Saturn remains to be one of the special consoles, and its place far outside of the mainstream only strengthens this bond, with arguably the finest arcade collection in its gaming library. The tale of the Saturn is one of woe. Many believe it was doomed from the start, a tragic misfit, fated to be branded as that other system. It's also blamed for being the beginning of the end for Sega as a hardware manufacturer, highlighting Sega at their pinnacle of haphazardry. 1994 began the ending of the fourth generation of video games, with such newly released consoles as the 3DO and Atari Jaguar, a 32-bit and a 64-bit console. They attempted to diminish the dominance of Sega and Nintendo's 16-bit machines controlling the market. Even Sega themselves got in on the act by releasing the 32X add-on to Mega Drive. Despite the failure of all these machines, it was clear Sega needed a new home console if they wanted to lead the market. The Super Nintendo had finally overtaken the Mega Drive in worldwide sales, backed with its seemingly never-ending supply of AAA titles. A true sequel to the Mega Drive, named the Giga Drive, was rumoured to be in production. The original concept was for a Super 2D machine with some 3D capabilities, and hardware superior to the 3DO. However, head of Sega of Japan, Nakayama, was unhappy with its primitive 3D capabilities, and wanted a machine capable of running a faithful port of their arcade hit sensation in Japan, Virtua Fighter, which needed high polygon counts and a fast processing speed. The design was taken back to the drawing board, and work began on how to further improve the system. It was also renamed because of Sega's planet fetish. Therefore, Saturn became the Giga Drive's new name. Meanwhile, SGI purchased MIPS Technologies. The two companies worked together to produce a CPU/3D GPU combination convenient for consoles. It was first offered to Tom Kalinske, the CEO of Sega of America, who took a liking to the design. Sega of Japan sent hardware teams to analyse the chip and found faults. These were amended by MIPS, but Nakayama decided against the chip. The chip was later offered to Nintendo and used in the N64. The reasoning behind Nakayama's decision is believed to be because the SGI chip cost $2 more to manufacture each chip than Hitachi CPU already chosen. However, something came which threw a spanner in the Saturn's architecture: the announcement of Sony's new powerhouse machine, the PlayStation. The PlayStation specifications were impressive, and as what many describe as a knee-jerk reaction by Sega, the decision was taken to include an additional CPU into the Saturn. In total, the console had two 32-bit SH2 CPUs and 6 RISC processors, 2MB RAM capable of 16.7 million colours, 200,000 polygons, texture map 500,000 flat shaded per second. It is Sega's first standalone CD-ROM based console, with 704 by 408 resolution and 32-channel sound. Potentially, the Saturn could have been a very powerful machine for its time. While most 3D consoles used triangles to render its graphics, the Saturn used quadrilaterals. Using quadrilaterals could render graphics more sharply than triangles. However, very little developers had any experience working with quadrilaterals, and all development kits were suited only to triangles. On top of this, working with two CPUs was also very new to developers, and many claimed the two didn't work in tandem and were unable to access the Saturn's internal memory RAM at the same time. Because of this, many games developed for the Saturn only used one CPU, therefore not taking advantage of the system's full power and making the games look outdated and very unimpressive. On the other hand, the CPUs were sometimes used to good effect. In Virtua Fighter, for instance, each character in battle used a separate CPU. This allowed for faster character animation. Yu Suzuki, head of AM2 Studios and head developer for Virtua Fighter, said, while reflecting upon Saturn Virtua Fighter development, "One very fast central processor would have been preferable. I don't think all programmers have the ability to program two CPUs. Most can only get about 1.5 times the speed you can get from one SH2. I think that only 1 in 100 programmers are good enough to get this kind of speed out of the Saturn." In November 1994, the Saturn was released to the Japanese public just a few weeks before the PlayStation. In its first days, the Saturn sold very well, 170,000 units, launching with the popular Virtua Fighter. At first in Japan, the Saturn's model was grey coloured. Over the course of its life, the Japanese market would see many console redesigns, including ones released by Hitachi, but the most notable would be the infamous all-white Saturn. The Saturn was a success for Sega in Japan. While they did lose out to Sony, Sega did manage to shift 5.3 million units in the region. It is a lot more than they had ever achieved with their previous consoles. This was due to some excellent RPGs, 2D shooters, and the Sakura Tyson series. Marketing was also very strong in Japan, with a recognisable character, SEGA Saturn, promoting the Saturn. After two failed cracks, Sega finally figured out Japan, only then to have North America let them down. In early 1995, American gamers were eagerly anticipating the new 32-bit machines from Japan. Tom Kalinske announced that Saturn would launch on Saturn Day, September 2nd, 1995. Hype was generated by gamers in the media, especially since Sony had announced that 1 week later, September 9th, 1995, the PlayStation would be released. Overall, the Saturn took about 2 to 3 years to complete. As you can see, it's quite a bulky machine. It's a lot bigger than the N64 and PlayStation 1. It's got a lot of hardware inside of it. Well, not the best hardware, but a lot of hardware. I do like its black, bold colour, and these lines are nice touches right here. As you can see, this model is the one with the grey buttons. As you can see, there's a cartridge slot here. The slot itself was not meant for gaming, but could be used in a variety of different ways. The more common uses were for an external memory card for save game portability, and for cheat devices such as the Game Shark. However, the slot was also used for Sega Netlink. This was a 28.8 modem built in a cart that could access the web, check email, and even play some online games with some of your friends who also have Netlink. Now, taking a look at the back of the unit here, as you can see, there's this gaping hole, and don't worry, I've got the cover for it, but yeah, anyway. There's a battery right about here. Now, what's interesting about this battery is it gives you some extra save files and allows you to save the date and time, which is quite good. I mean, there's some extra save space along with the old cartridge input here, and that is a nice touch. There is one disadvantage to this, however. If your battery runs out, you will lose all your data. Here you see we have the Model 2 Sega Saturn controller. The Model 1 controller was a bit bigger, but this controller's quite flimsy, but it's very comfortable and perfect for playing old school arcade games and 2D games. At the first ever E3 in the 11th of May 1995, Kalinske initiated Sega's surprise plan. He revealed the launch date Saturn Day was fake and that the Saturn was actually available right now in select stores. The idea was to get an early 4-month lead on the PlayStation in order to dominate the 32-bit era early. What was to follow, though, was disastrous.